All righty, there we are. Good morning, everybody. This is Jason Small with the Montana AFL-CIO, and we're doing another installment of the Blue Collar News today. And up for your viewing pleasure, we have the Director of the Montana Department of Labor, Commissioner Sarah Swanson. So, Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Jason. I serve as the cabinet level secretary for the Department of Labor and Industry in the Governor's Cabinet in Montana. We're a broad agency. We're 667 employees strong, and the Department of Labor gets to impact some aspect of almost every single Montanan's life every day. When we look at the Montana labor economy, we know Montana's on the move. We are focused on tearing down barriers to work, modernizing our outdated systems. How do we serve workers and employers alike? And really focused on building a workforce strategy that's worker-focused, industry-led, and future-ready for Montana. We know there's some economic headwinds nationally, but we think Montana is positioned to thrive because we are investing in high-wage, high-skilled career pathways now, and that's what the Governor's 406 Jobs Framework is all about, making sure every Montanan has a pathway to a career and a plan to achieve it.
Excellent. So, I know there's always a ebb and flow in the labor market, and there's always potential. There's always different potential for jobs and whatnot and what have you. So, what is the current state of Montana's workforce right now? What are we looking at?
Montana's labor market remains strong. Our April 2026 unemployment was at 3.5%. That's well below the national average of 4.3. Our payroll jobs in Montana increased by over 800 in April, which were really led by construction and healthcare sectors. But beneath those numbers, we know we still have some serious workforce shortages across key industry sectors in Montana. The challenge isn't just jobs versus workers anymore. It's whether workers in Montana can access pathways into stable, family supporting careers without having to uproot their families and move. We know we have more than 100,000 working age Montanans that are not currently participating in our workforce at all. And that's one of the biggest reasons that 406 Jobs was created. When Montana really looks forward, we know that our future depends on reconnecting those 100,000 people to opportunity and building systems in all of our state agencies, not just the Department of Labor and Industry, that actually work for workers and employers.
Right. So, what are the biggest workforce challenges that we're facing in Montana?
We toured Montana last fall on our Montanans at Work tour. We did 15 cities in 5 weeks across Montana, socializing the Governor's 406 Jobs Executive Order and listening to Montanans in communities all across the state. And the same challenges are plaguing communities all around the state. We heard about housing shortages, childcare shortages. We heard about challenges with workforce participation rates. We have an aging workforce, especially in healthcare and our building trade sectors. There are real geographic challenges in Montana that plague our rural, our frontier, and our tribal communities. And the rapid technology changes and AI adoptions needed by both our workers and our employers alike is overwhelming a lot of people of not knowing where to start. We know we need much stronger transitions from education into high wage, high skill careers. And we know that there are some licensing bottlenecks in critical occupations that require a license from the Department of Labor and Industry before that individual can go to work every day. At the end of the day, we know that the old siloed approach is not enough anymore. That's why 406 Jobs was built around interagency coordination, but more importantly, around industry-led solutions.
Excellent. So, in Montana right now, are the employers still struggling to find workers everywhere, or is it the other way? Are workers struggling to find good paying jobs?
I would argue that both are true. Employers tell us that they are still struggling to fill enough high skill positions on time and in the locations where they need them when they need them. But workers also tell us that they're often struggling to navigate training systems or to access affordable pathways to enter into those careers. We know we have to find better alignment between the education, the workforce systems, and the real labor market demand on the ground in communities. Skill-based hiring matters. Earn and learn models like registered apprenticeship matter. And registered apprenticeship itself is the biggest tool we have to turn this corner. We have to stop building systems around the bureaucracy and start building them around the people who live in communities right here in Montana.
Oh, excellent. Great. So, what are the hot industries? Where's the job growth in Montana right now?
That is the core of 406 jobs here in Montana, is the 6 high impact industries that are facing critical, chronic, ongoing labor shortages. We know that in just these 6 key sectors alone, we need 300,000 new skilled trained workers to come online in the next 10 years. That includes the construction trades, healthcare careers, advanced manufacturing and computing, education and childcare, hospitality and recreation, and professional and financial services, the backbone of all of our businesses. Those 6 high demand sectors were selected when we designed the 406 job strategy because they represent 61% of Montana employment, where we generate more than 40 billion in economic production annually. They account for about 53% of Montana's GDP. And if we don't turn this corner, we are going to have increased critical, chronic, ongoing shortages in each of these industries.
So, from a worker's standpoint, what do you hear most from working families across the state?
That from the perspective of most working families, the struggle that they have the most is that our training system and our education system is set up in such a way that they have to leave their community, leave their family, or leave their home in order to move for a short time, 2 to 4 years, to access meaningful workforce training. By partnering traditional higher ed programs and direct on the job training through registered apprenticeship, we know we can bend that curve. And that's the biggest struggle for a lot of families, is this desire to stay in their home, to care for their families and their loved ones without having to relocate to access high skill, high wage career training.
Right. So, what we've talked about opportunities and whatnot, but let's talk wages for just a second. Are wages finally catching up with the cost of living in Montana, or how's that looking at this time?
Montana is one of 2 states in the country where for 2 years in a row, real wage growth, so wages calculated with inflation in mind, have outpaced inflation. Only Montana and Florida have been there. We know there's still room to grow, but I think the Montana economy is on the move. We see steady wage growth every year. Just last week, we released the new average weekly wage for Montana that shows an additional increase for 2026. And we think that we're on the right track, but more work is yet to be done.
Excellent. So we've heard you reference 406 jobs quite a few times. And, for the listeners out there who might not know what it is, who haven't been reading the papers or keeping up on stuff, what exactly is the 406 Jobs Initiative?
406 Jobs is an executive order signed by Governor Gianforte in August of 2025. It's industry-led, it's AI-focused, and it requires meaningful interagency collaboration across all of state government. It's designed to ensure that every Montanan actually has a pathway to a career and a plan to achieve it. Now, all that said, 406 Jobs is a framework. It's a way that we can reconnect state agencies to better serve citizens who are interested in the education and workforce environment. It's the culmination of 18 months of work by our State Workforce Innovation Board. That is a board made up of Montanans who volunteer to serve and are appointed by the governor. It's required federally to be 51% industry-led. So we have representatives from each of those 6 critical sectors that we talked about a moment ago. We also have representatives from organized labor, friends like yourself that are willing to serve with us. And then we have representatives from each of the state agencies involved in the stewardship of Montana's education and workforce ecosystem. Together, they spent 18 months with professional facilitators to make recommendations to the governor of what could we do to improve, streamline, and strengthen Montana's workforce system. And at the end of that 18 months of work, what came out the other end was 406 Jobs. The 406 Jobs framework is designed around 3 simple ideas: 4 pathways to work, representing the 4 ways that Montanans often enter into and move around the labor market. We all know about the traditional college pathway. More and more Montanans are learning every day about on-the-job training opportunities like registered apprenticeship. Entrepreneurship is actually most Montanans' first engagement with the workforce system, and then the military transitions. Most Montanans know that the military is the largest training provider in the world, but we still have work to do, both to transition young people into the military, but more importantly, to transition them out with their qualifications intact when they've finished their service to our country and they've been trained by the US government and their branch of the armed services. How do we keep those qualifications intact and deploy them into the workforce with the skills and abilities that they've learned with the military? The second pillar of 406 jobs is zero barriers, focusing on the barriers that do exist, whether they're created by state agencies or the education system itself, or whether they are barriers like housing, like childcare, like inability to access those supportive services that make it possible for somebody to dedicate their time to training and career advancement. And the third pillar is those 6 high impact critical industries that have critical chronic ongoing shortages, really focusing all of our systems around solving pathways to entry, making sure that all 4 pathways are being utilized, that we're eliminating barriers wherever we find them, and that we're laser focused on the 6 critical industries that represent 61% of Montana's economy. As we work through overcoming those barriers and getting more Montanans to work, 406 Jobs is focused on prepared employees, engaged employers, and ensuring that our system is responsive to the issues that are actually facing Montanans.
So just to reiterate your point, what industries are considered the biggest priorities under 406 jobs?
So construction and the building trades continues to be the backbone of our economy. The healthcare careers sector that is both in facility, inpatient and outpatient healthcare, as well as behavioral healthcare. Education and childcare continue to have chronic wage shortages. Recreation and hospitality is an emerging industry all over Montana that continues to need additional skilled trained workers. The manufacturing, advanced manufacturing and computing sector continues to grow, especially in counties like Gallatin, with the emergence of Montana as a national leader in quantum and photonics. And then last but not least is the financial and professional services sector. The backbone of every business and every industry in Montana are the accountants, the bookkeepers, the attorneys, and the other folks that are keeping business moving in facilities around Montana.
Excellent. So as this progresses throughout the duration of the year, what does success look like by the end of the year? Success.
So after receiving the governor's executive order in August of last year, he gave the State Workforce Innovation Board and the Department of Labor 90 days to develop a 1-year implementation plan. We hit the road. We did the Montanans at Work tour, visiting with Montanans in over 15 cities around the state. And what we learned in those 5 weeks was developed into the 1-year strategic plan that has 12 high impact initiatives, starting with growing registered apprenticeship, increasing middle and high school career exploration through a partnership with the Montana Chamber of Commerce's Empower program for young people, coupled with Jobs for Montana Graduates, the barrier busting program that the Department of Labor administers in over 60 high schools around Montana, and 10 other key initiatives. We will measure our success in November again of this year, but as we speak, the State Workforce Board is beginning to develop the initiatives for year 2 of what does success look like.
Excellent. So, we're an extremely large state, and there's a lot of differences between the east and west, north and south parts of the state, and a lot of geographically segregated areas. So how does 406 jobs help rural Montana communities specifically?
The key point of rural communities is what we call local sector partnerships. That pulls together individuals in those 6 critical sectors in a rural community or in a rural region, and ensures that the industry leaders in that region have a voice and have a seat at the table and advise state agencies on what they need in their community. We know this looks differently in Helena than it does in Hardin or Miles City or Glasgow. And so the important part is those local sector partnerships of empowering local leaders to be the architects of what does their sector in their community, in their region, truly need, and then ensuring that we have responsive state agencies that are meeting the needs that are identified by those communities. It's also a focus on rural healthcare workforce investments. You may have heard about the Rural Health Transformation Program and Montana's award that was the fourth largest funding award in the country. Our team at the Department of Labor, in partnership with the State Workforce Board and led by our 406 Jobs framework, is deploying the Workforce Investment Initiative for those dollars. Just over $20 million per year for the next 5 years, injected directly into rural healthcare workforce, led by the leaders of those facilities in rural communities. And at the end of the day, we know that registered apprenticeship across all of the industries is the key to success in rural communities. That's what allows Montanans to stay in their home, stay in their communities, stay with their family, while still accessing high skill, high wage technical training and education without having to move.
Right on. So you've been mentioning registered apprenticeships, and there's there's quite a few different types of those, but how important are the skilled trades and union apprenticeship programs to Montana's future workforce?
We know they're critical. The market share provided in the training environment by the 11 joint apprenticeship training centers that are facilitated here in Montana are key to the success. They're not the only answer, though. We need growth in all registered apprenticeships, including our joint apprenticeship training centers. Those 11 training centers currently train hundreds of Montanans a year for both licensed and unlicensed trades, from plumbers and electricians to iron workers, laborers, boiler makers. They provide a key aspect of training that is underserved, or in some cases unserved entirely, by our higher education system. They're a key component of the training program, and frankly are a component that many Montanans still don't know about in communities around the state. Partnered with the additional registered apprenticeship opportunities facilitated directly by Montana's employers, all of the above strategy, including higher ed, joint apprenticeship training centers, and private apprenticeships, is how we're going to move the needle and train the 30,000 new skilled trained construction workers that we know we need in the next 10 years.
Excellent. So what opportunities exist for workers who do not have a 4-year college degree? And this should fall directly under the purview of 406 Jobs.
Absolutely. There are huge opportunities for Montanans right now that don't have a 4-year degree. Those opportunities exist in the skilled trades. There are dozens of healthcare industry support roles that are available to those Montanans today. The manufacturing, and especially the advanced manufacturing sector, is ripe for individuals with mechanical reasoning skills and aptitude that don't have a 4-year degree. There are dozens of technology technician roles in all industries in Montana. Registered apprenticeship and entrepreneurship are ripe for Montanans that don't have a full 4-year education. We know Montana needs to value skills and capability just as much as traditional credentials. And when we look at the numbers, we know that right now in Montana, only 35% of our citizens over the age of 24 actually hold a bachelor's degree or higher. So the opportunities for workers without a 4-year degree are ripe, especially if we package their technical knowledge with registered apprenticeship to sharpen those skills and point them right into an industry that needs them today.
Excellent. So moving past the apprenticeship section there, we need to figure out what's actually occurring. So what barriers are preventing people from entering or re-entering the workforce in Montana?
There are many. The most common that we hear about are shortages in childcare. Skilled childcare that allows Montanans to enter the workforce is an important part. 4 years ago, the Department of Labor and Industry economists did a study on all licensed childcare in Montana and identified over 70,000 Montana parents that were unable to access the workforce full-time because of childcare shortages. We just repeated that research in the last year, and the good news is we're bending the curve, but we still have about 50,000 families that identify that they are not accessing the workforce full-time because of a childcare shortage. Housing, especially in key communities around the state, continues to be a challenge. As we're recruiting new workers to relocate into communities where the work is, our housing supply is still working hard to keep up. And the cost of housing continues to be a challenge for some Montanans, especially at that entry level. First-year apprentices struggle more to access housing in the community where their work is than those that are further along in their apprenticeship or licensed trade. Transportation in much of our rural, remote, and tribal communities across Montana continues to be a challenge. How do we access transportation to help people move from where their community is to where their training is, even in short terms? There are continuing to be challenges in accessing the workforce for Montanans with disabilities. That's a key focus of 406 Jobs in year one, is improving that pipeline and improving those connections so that Montanans with a disability who still want to access meaningful work have the resources and the opportunity they can to do so. We're actively looking at the Department of Labor about any delays that prevent Montanans from working that may be caused by the professional occupational licensing system. And at the end of the day, I think the biggest challenge or barrier that's preventing people from accessing opportunity is just lack of awareness. Our talent strategy in Montana for how do we make sure that all of our young people, whether it's through middle and high school career exploration, or our young people as they're exiting college, how do they know about all of these new and emerging opportunities in Montana? That part of our system still needs considerable work. And then we can't take our eye off the ball on the mental health challenges in many industries for many Montanans and the price that we pay with burnout. The Montana grit and the Montana work ethic is alive and well. But if we continue to just buckle down and do more with less while we're waiting for those new skilled trained workers to join the workforce, we have to be mindful of the impacts of burnout on the mental health of our existing workers.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So, we've had you've hit so many points and topics here. It's incredibly interesting. So, what is Montana doing to recruit and retain healthcare workers?
So through the 406 Jobs Initiative and with the 5-year investment of rural health transformation, we are laser focused on this. There is about $22 million a year that is going to be invested annually into our workforce system for healthcare workers. There's going to be recruitment incentives. In fact, the Department of Labor just released an RFP hiring a talent attraction firm to help us in year one recruit and relocate current skilled trained workers across 5 healthcare occupations: physicians, registered nurses, advanced practice providers like physician assistants and nurse practitioners, dental hygienists, as well as emergency care providers across Montana. We have critical shortages in those professions right now. And so we're releasing an RFP to bring a firm on board to help us with recruitment, to bring some of those folks and increase our supply right now. There's going to be scholarship incentives for current Montanans that are going to school to pursue those trades. And there's also a focus on our HelpLink population. HelpLink are those Montana citizens over the age of 18 that are currently enrolled in Medicaid expansion for their healthcare. There is funding in this current year of rural health transformation to identify up to 700 of those Montanans on Medicaid expansion and provide them key training and access to entry-level healthcare careers so that they can begin to mobilize into a career in healthcare, into employer-sponsored health insurance, and begin their trajectory through the healthcare sector, whether that's surgery technicians, whether that is CNAs, phlebotomists, laboratory technicians, any of those careers that can largely be served through registered apprenticeship in partnership with Montana's healthcare employers. We aim to serve 700 of them this year to mobilize them back into the workforce through meaningful employment. There's also going to be a tremendous focus on expansion of residency slots in Montana. We know that most physicians build their practice where they did their residency. So how can we meaningfully work with our healthcare providers that are facilitating residencies now that have the appropriate faculty and expertise on staff? And how can we add additional residency slots in Montana? We're also going to conduct a feasibility study about expanding residencies in Montana and potentially exploring new residencies in Montana, and what would that cost? That includes a broad conversation about preceptor incentives. This is something the Montana legislature has tackled year after year for many sessions, largely through the lens of tax credits. Unsuccessfully, no legislation has passed yet, but really diving into what is the benefit and what is the reward of paying preceptors stipends, whether it's through cash incentives, through additional time off, or through tax incentives. How do we compensate the Montanans that are working as preceptors to train the next generation of healthcare workers? And then there's also a component of rural health transformation focusing on the deployment of AI tools while still protecting patient health and safety, still leaving the healthcare provider in charge of that relationship with their patient. But how do we maximize AI tools to reduce provider burnout, to improve their availability to serve their clients and their patients? Montana really intends, in short, to become a national leader in the innovation around rural healthcare workforce, led through local sector partnerships and partnership with the employers that are leading in our communities around the state right now.
Well, great. So we've had a little discussion about the workforce shortage in healthcare. One of the other perennial industries or whatnot that we always hear about shortages is education. Are you guys doing anything to help bring in more teachers or help in the education field?
We are. When we look at education, we really think that it's a whole sector strategy. So when we talk about education, we talk about it hand in hand with childcare. Both directly impact labor force participation in all of the other industries. Childcare, we often say, is the workforce behind the workforce in Montana. It especially impacts women and rural communities. And both workforce education and childcare policy are deeply connected in how we drive communities. We are maximizing our utilization of registered apprenticeship in both industries. We have apprenticeships underway in communities around the state for childcare workers right now, where while working hand in hand with a childcare facility, folks can obtain their 2-year credential to be a certified childcare specialist. And right on the back of that, we just launched Montana's first registered apprenticeship program for licensed educators in Montana. This is not an alternative pathway. It is still a full bachelor's degree pathway that still leads in a full unrestricted Class 2 license for that individual at the end of their apprenticeship. We just launched our first round of funding. We're partnering through a competitive process. It was awarded to Western Governors University, and we are partnering with 26 school districts around Montana, urban, rural, tribal, to really get broad uptake across all of Montana. And we aim to train 78 aspiring educators beginning in the next school year around the state through registered apprenticeship. Many of those aspiring educators that are joining this first cohort are already 2-year certificate holders in the childcare space. So the next step on their career ladder is to obtain their full teaching certificate. But many more of those individuals are currently working without a college degree as a paraprofessional in their district. We know they already meet the cultural fit. The school district very much wants them to stay as active employees, but they'd like them to pursue their full credential so they can have a classroom of their own. And that's what the Registered Teacher Apprenticeship Program is all about. We are so excited to launch the first cohort this fall, and we have funding for 1 and possibly 2 more cohorts. The best part of this is that we received funding from the U.S. Department of Labor for this initial cohort. And what we're going to do with that funding is pay for what we call related instruction. That's the college curriculum component. So every one of these 78 educators in the first cohort are going to have the opportunity to graduate student loan debt free. They'll have their teaching credential, and they won't have the anchor of student loan debt while they enter the classroom and join a full-time faculty member of their school district.
Excellent. All right, so I guess we'll skip around a little bit. What can employers do to better recruit and retain workers in state?
Yeah, I really believe that partnering higher education components with registered apprenticeship is the #1 tool employers can access. When an employer looks at recruiting, training, and then retaining an employer, the #1 question they ask me is return on investment. How do I get some value back out of the investment I'm putting into this worker? I always point them directly to registered apprenticeship, because when we look at registered apprenticeship completers in Montana, 5 years after they complete their apprenticeship, 86% still work for their sponsor employer 5 years later. That is a retention ratio that we don't see anywhere else in our economy. So the #1 thing an employer can do to improve retention and improve the skills base of their workers is to utilize registered apprenticeship.
Pretty incredible. So, how does the department help connect young people to career opportunities earlier on?
Career exploration in middle and high school is absolutely the key. Working hand in hand with school districts, with the school trustees that we connect with through the Montana School Board Association, with our colleagues at the university system and the Office of the Higher Ed Commissioner, and the incredible staff over at Montana's Office of Public Instruction, focusing on not only just job shadowing or telling students about the opportunities in these 6 high demand industries, but we have a team of experts here at the department that we call career developers that are available to all of those partners that will go into a school district and will work with the teacher leaders and the administrators in that district to develop meaningful, high quality pre-apprenticeship pathways that can pipeline these young people, connect them directly with employers in their community and their region to begin exploring hands-on the careers they think they're interested in, that can pipeline them directly into a full registered apprenticeship as soon as they graduate high school, often in a way that gives them credit for the hours that they spent in the pre-apprenticeship towards their full registered apprenticeship. We're also working together with Montana's legislators, deploying and refining Montana's industry recognized credential registry. We all know about the STARS Act, House Bill 252 from the last legislative session. But often when we talk about the STARS Act, we only talk about the first half of the bill. It was a very important half. It injected $110 million into increasing starting and other teacher pay around the state. That's critical. But the second half of the bill created Montana's first industry recognized credential registry. That list is held in administrative rule here at the Department of Labor and Industry. And it requires the department annually by December 1st to update the list to have a full comprehensive list of all of the career-ready credentials that actual employers on the ground value for employees in Montana. And then the value add for districts is that any high school student, high school graduate, I should say, that graduates high school with one of those credentials in hand, it creates permanent ongoing formula funding back to both the middle school and the high school that prepared that young person to incentivize them to send more people through that same pathway in the future. That credential registry is going to be absolutely critical. When we think about the healthcare careers sector, we are laser focused on increasing access to HOSA chapters, the Health Occupation Science Association across Montana, where we partner young people in high school directly with the healthcare employers through a classroom-based model. We're also focused on increasing Jobs for Montana graduates classes. Those classes are held in over 60 middle and high schools around the state right now. A school district that signs up for a JMG chapter receives an annual stipend from the Department of Labor to compensate their costs for the teacher, for the classroom, for any expenses that the class incurs through project-based learning or to travel to attend our state or national conventions, to ensure that we are giving young people access to all of those exploratory opportunities, both in and out of their community.
Great. So I guess we'll swap around a little bit more again here. So, what concerns you the most about Montana's workforce over the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
I think the thing that keeps me up the most at night right now is the risk of Montana's employers and workers falling behind technologically. We have so many opportunities to leverage AI to enhance our workers rather than replace workers with AI, but that requires meaningful investment now. Upskilling our workers, upskilling our employers in how to utilize AI to maximize their impact on the workforce is going to be critical. And I worry that if we don't engage quickly, we're going to fall behind technologically. I worry about our workforce participation rate in Montana. Montana is still an aging environment. We still have several years ahead of us where the baby boomer generation is going to continue to retire at increasing numbers, and we don't currently have enough workers entering the workforce to replace them. So how do we mobilize technology? How do we improve the efficiency of our employers? But more importantly, how do we make sure that we're doing all of that while still ensuring that every worker goes home safe every shift? That Montana work ethic, that Montana grit that I mentioned earlier, incentivizes most of us to just work harder, work longer, and get the job done. But we have to make sure we're doing that with safety in mind. and ensuring that we instill a culture of safety in our young people from a young age, because making sure every Montanan goes home safe every day is the most important thing we can work on in our workforce. And then, of course, focusing on rural healthcare access, housing affordability, and at the end of the day, making sure that we're focused on eliminating the export tax, keeping young families in Montana so that we can continue to address all of these issues is so important. And we know that over time, we lose about 50% of every young person that we export out of this state for training or education or employment. So keeping those young families here in Montana is so critical to all of our endeavors.
Oh boy. It's often said that our greatest export is our children, which is probably quite true. So what gives you optimism about Montana's economic future?
The work ethic and just the grit of Montanans, I think, is going to persevere. Montanans' continued willingness to innovate and the strong labor participation and partnerships between workers, employers, and organizations that support workers is so important. Employers continuing to step up, to learn, to train, and to develop the next generation of workers. I'm excited about the growth rates that we see in registered apprenticeship across the state. We continue to set records year after year with more Montanans accessing registered apprenticeship as a pathway to economic self-sufficiency. The federal investment opportunities into innovative workforce strategies right now are unlike anything we've ever seen. So making sure that as a system, all of our state workforce and education partners are working together to access those investment opportunities and deploy them directly into communities and into workers' hands is critical. And at the end of the day, it's Montana's culture of problem solving. We know that Montana is small enough to move fast and bold enough to lead. And we're in a really unique position where we can tell our federal partners that Montana is the perfect environment to pilot anything at scale. So we have this momentum building. Our federal partners have demonstrated they're willing to invest in Montana. Now we just have to do the work on the ground.
Absolutely wonderful. So, well, we had a discussion earlier, and I told you we'd keep this to around a half an hour to give you opportunity to get out of Dodge today, because I know you're extraordinarily busy and you got to fly out. So I'd like to just kind of ask one more real quick question, and we can always circle back later because we'll have way more questions for you here coming up. So, what should Montana be paying attention to for the rest of 2026? There any big moves that we should be expecting?
I think that between now and September, any Montanan that either employs individuals in a licensed occupation or those 200,000 plus Montanans that count on that occupational license to go to work every day should pay attention to and engage in our work at the Licensing Reform Task Force. Our next in-person meeting of that task force is actually coming up next Monday, a week from today. We'll be in Billings at the College of Technology all day on June 8th. And we are laser focused on finishing the work of that task force and making policy recommendations to both Governor Gianforte and the incoming legislature by September of this year. So the Licensing Reform Task Force is probably the first thing Montanans should pay attention to. The expansion of our healthcare workforce is a really important part of our economy for all Montanans to pay attention to. Healthcare, whether you're in the largest cities in Montana or whether you're in a small rural community, is the backbone of our community. We cannot have vibrant communities without a strong healthcare sector. And so the work that we're doing to continue to expand training and retention in our healthcare sector is an important focus of all Montanans. The rollout of a talent marketplace, this connection or intersection between education and workforce, from middle and high schoolers to young adults exiting higher education or registered apprenticeship, or even just adults looking to change careers or access new opportunities in new and innovative careers, is going to be really important. One of the key initiatives for 406 Jobs and for all agencies across state government is to truly develop a talent marketplace where all Montanans have one place to go where they can find the opportunities available to them, connect directly to those training opportunities, and then connect directly to employment. And similarly, that creates one point of engagement for our employers. How do they access the emerging talent pipeline and the Montanans that might want to work for them? So this rollout of Montana's new talent marketplace is going to be a key focus to pay attention to. The credential registry that we talked about, whether you're a young person in middle and high school now, you're a parent wondering how the heck do I navigate this system, or you're an employer trying to figure out how do I access and get involved with the schools in my community, the industry recognized credential registry is a key component. And last but not least, I think the most important thing Montanans can pay attention to is the growth of registered apprenticeship in our state. That is the way that we unlock talent and unlock access for Montanans, no matter where they live. Every Montanan in every community can access a registered apprenticeship skilled training program right in their community without having to relocate away from their family and their community.
Well, great. That was a lot of good answers to in regards to the future of Montana. We sure appreciate that, Commissioner Swanson, and I'll reserve the right to have you back on at some other point here so we can grill you some more. But anyway, that concludes today's episode of the Blue Collar News, and thank you a whole bunch. We'll get back to you later.
Thank you.